I once had a crush on someone for 10 years. Desperate for an answer, I plucked up the courage to quit my job and move to his city. Before I could even confess my feelings, I heard from others that he was about to get married. In that instant, all I could bring myself to say was the heart-wrenching word. Congratulations. 10 years of obsession suddenly lifted away from me. When Kiyu added me on WeChat, I struggled to remember who he was for a long while. We had met at a friend's wedding. I was a bridesmaid, and he was a friend of the groom and also the wedding car driver. I remembered him clearly, not only because we sat at the same table, but also because of his obvious, unapologetic glances. The unspoken understanding between adults often sparks in a single moment of eye contact. Unfortunately, I felt nothing for him. Kiyu was dressed casually in a white t-shirt and shorts, with pleasant, open features and an air of quiet confidence mixed with ease. Another bridesmaid had already found out about him. He was a friend of a relative of the groom, ran his own car modification workshop, and was undoubtedly from a wealthy family. After the wedding, my friend told me some gossip. The makeup artist for the wedding had openly flirted with Kiyu in the wedding car, exchanged WeChat with him, and left with him before the reception even ended that night. The openness and boldness of modern people were truly astonishing. So when Kiyu suddenly added me more than half a month later, I was genuinely surprised. But I had to admit, his timing was perfect. I was exhausted from going on one bizarre blind date after another. Our first meeting was at an obscure Spanish restaurant in the city center. The lighting was colorful but not harsh, and the spacious dining area held only a few scattered tables, with soft classical music playing in the background. I'm so sorry, I had no idea the traffic would be this bad. I had switched to the metro halfway, and walked some distance before arriving late. A fine mist clung to me, making me look somewhat disheveled, and I felt deeply apologetic for being late. I had no idea how long he had been waiting. His face showed impatience after hours of boredom. He glanced up at me and casually handed over a tissue. I told you I'd pick you up, but you insisted on taking a taxi alone. His straightforward, unpolished tone was irritating, but I held back my anger. We lived on opposite sides of the city. For our first meeting, I hadn't wanted to trouble him to drive all the way across town. My kindness had been completely misunderstood. Yeah, I should have let you pick me up, I said sarcastically. Instead of you waiting here alone, we could have been stuck in traffic together and kept each other company. He stared at me, looking utterly flabbergasted. I took the tissue and quickly wiped the fine droplets of water from my clothes. Meeting his inexplicably scrutinizing gaze, I suddenly couldn't be bothered to pretend to be reserved anymore. I'm hungry. Can we order soon? I gave him a fake, polite smile. With that thought, I relaxed completely. I unceremoniously dragged the menu from the corner of the table and glanced at the dishes he had already ordered. He seemed somewhat speechless at my behavior and raised a hand to call the waiter. While waiting for the food, I asked him a few routine questions in a detached tone. What do you like to do in your free time? Which places have you traveled to? Do you prefer cats or dogs? After over 2 hours of traveling, I was starving. I nibbled on the bread served before the meal, focusing entirely on eating. I barely cared about his answers anymore. In fact, I was already thinking of a polite, dignified way to end the meal. Suddenly he said, "What's the point of asking those questions?" Surprised, I looked up at him. You went on without waiting for my response. I own a flat and a car. The flat is a penthouse in Lakeside Green City. I have several cars. I drove a Cayenne today. Isn't this the kind of thing you people really want to know? He thought I was beating around the bush and putting on a reserved act. If you think I only care about material things, why did you ask to meet me? The white mushrooms on the hot plate sizzled loudly, just like how restless I felt inside. When I first saw you, I didn't think you were particularly beautiful, but you were easy on the eyes. I thought this man was completely crazy. Do you want to try dating? His direct proposal caught me off guard. I picked up a tissue and wiped the grease from the corner of my mouth, trying to stay graceful. You're very direct, and I think that's a good thing. But you might have misunderstood me. I don't have high financial requirements for a marriage partner. That's why I didn't ask about your flat or car. I didn't think it was necessary. I paused, seeing that he was listening carefully, and continued. I'm not young anymore. I only date with marriage in mind. I don't have time to waste on casual relationships. So besides financial ability, What other requirements do you have? He didn't get angry, which impressed me again. I think personal conduct is really important. After all, marriage is supposed to last a lifetime. I looked straight into his eyes and asked teasingly, on the day of the wedding, did you go to a hotel with that girl? My voice was accidentally a little too loud and startled the nearby waiter. I embarrassingly looked away, pretending to stare at a slice of ham on my plate, while my face burned with embarrassment. An awkward silence fell between us, and I could almost sense rising anger. I was exhausted from being in the car all day. I didn't have the energy. The food at the wedding wasn't great, so I went to eat barbecue with friends afterwards, and then we all went home separately. That made sense. We all knew how tiring a wedding day could be. I pretended to be calm and toasted him with water. Sorry, I misunderstood you. That girl asked me out later, and we hung out a few times, but nothing happened, he added, then clinked glasses with me while I was still stunned. After dinner, he walked with me for a while until we reached the metro station. You're quite interesting, he said. After that meal, Kiyu turned out to be different from what I had imagined. But that didn't change my feeling that we came from two different worlds. I went back to endless blind dates. Each date was stranger than the last. One man was plain-looking, just over 170 centimeters tall, had no flat or car, and kept prying into my romantic history. I stubbornly said I'd had a short relationship. At my age, I was too embarrassed to admit that I had never dated anyone at 27. If only I hadn't said anything. After I answered, he began to interrogate me about every detail. From my ex-boyfriend's family background to the details of our dates, he eventually began hinting at private questions. How far did you go? I casually replied, we met each other's parents. Immediately his expression changed. I noticed his hands crossed instinctively, and suddenly realized he was actually asking if I was still a virgin. Once I understood, I completely lost the desire to continue talking. Why did you break up in the end? I smiled politely. Personal reasons. I'd rather not say. Maybe we should end here for today. Nice meeting you. Shall we walk to the metro together? He quickly stood up when I did, following me with a cautious look. As we took the escalator downstairs, he tried to encourage me. I think you're all right. You can message me sometime if you want. Maybe some other time, I replied coldly. Just wanting to get to the metro quickly. Seeing my attitude, he rambled on. Once a woman turns 28, she loses her fertility advantages. You're not young anymore, only have a bachelor's degree. And it'll be hard to advance further in your career. Settling down early is definitely more practical. That may be true, but I earn a decent annual salary. A bachelor's from a 985 university is still better than a third-class master's. My company also provides accommodation. If marriage doesn't improve my quality of life, why would I settle for less? He had been bragging all the way about his ordinary master's degree. But now he fell silent. My salary was no lower than his. Well, you still have to get married eventually, he mumbled, not daring to look at me. But he was right about one thing. I was not young anymore. I had missed my youth, and the chance of meeting someone suitable in the blind date market was even lower. Just as I stepped out of the shopping mall, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Kiyu. Are you outside the SN store in S Mall? I looked around, confused. How do you know? It really is you. There was faint anger in his voice. Who's the person next to you? A blind date. I looked up and saw him standing by the window on the second floor of the B-brand store opposite, his hands in his pockets. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I thought I heard a scornful laugh through the phone. Do you want to come to me? He spoke from above, looking like a hero descending from the heavens. I left the man beside me without hesitation. The B-brand store was inside the opposite mall. By the time I arrived, Kiyu had already paid and was waiting for me comfortably on the sofa. Blind date didn't work out. I hummed in response and suddenly thought he looked particularly attractive that day. Why are you staring at me like that? Washing the bad taste out of my eyes. You're ridiculous. With that, he naturally took my hand. His palm was large and soft, wrapping around mine warm and strong. When I looked up, I saw him awkwardly turn his face away, the tips of his ears bright red. It was the passion of a sweaty teenage boy on the basketball court on that early summer afternoon. And the girl under the camphor tree, clutching a bottle of mineral water, never brave enough to step forward. I didn't pull away. Instead, I held his hand back, as if bravely grasping the fate I could hold onto right now. Kiyu took me to meet his group of friends, most of whom he had grown up with and stayed in the same circle with. Their usual hangout was a famous bar in the city, which they partly owned as major shareholders and hired a professional team to run. The business was good, thanks in part to their connections. Sister-in-law, we've met before. At the wedding. Kiyu took one look at you and fell for you. Really? What did he like about me? I asked curiously, looking at Kiyu. Before Kiyu could speak, his childhood friend Lu Heng jumped in. Sister-in-law, you have an elegant air, you look like a proper decent woman. Kiyu didn't deny it. Surprisingly, Kiyu's friends approved of me. Perhaps among their crowd, my glasses and quiet, gentle appearance made me the kind of woman they saw as suitable for marriage and family. They spent money freely and lived a life of luxury. But that didn't mean they lacked sound values after all. They were well educated. They lived under their parents' achievements. In their youth, they had worked hard and tried, only to realize they could never surpass their parents' success. So they chose to live comfortably as wealthy young people, hoping only not to bring trouble to their families. That night, Kiyu drank a little too much. I drove him home. His home was not far from the bar, a penthouse with direct elevator access to the door. After helping him onto the bed, changing his clothes, and cleaning up the mess, I took the chance to look around his home properly during a quiet moment. Earlier, when looking for his bedroom, I had opened the wrong door by mistake and almost thought I'd walked into a theme park. Every boy dreams of having a games room. Inside, there was a row of high-end gaming computers and consoles, cool keyboards and mice, a wall-sized map of World of Warcraft behind them, and an entire wall of figurine collections. I froze for a moment when I received a message from Jiang Cheng. Come to think of it, I hadn't contacted him since I heard he was getting married. In the 10 years we had known each other, that had never happened before. And when I received his message now, I only felt annoyed, without the tangled, fluctuating emotions I used to have. How have you been lately? Have you got a boyfriend? I could almost picture his fake concerned tone. Yes, I have a boyfriend. He won't be happy if you message me late at night. I didn't reply, pretending my boyfriend was jealous, and wouldn't let me respond. I glanced at the deeply sleeping Kiyu and suddenly felt completely safe. You really have a boyfriend? Han, you haven't seen how cruel the world can be. Many men have hidden motives. You need to protect yourself. He's not happy. Are you still with him this late? How long have you known each other? His messages flooded in. I could barely keep up. Then he called me. I answered and spoke before he could. Jiang Cheng, we're just friends. What does my dating have to do with you? Besides, you're married. Caring about a female friend's private life late at night. Where does that leave your wife? There was a long silence. Eventually he whispered. Han, I was just worried about you. I appreciate your concern. Thank you. With that, I hung up. After that, we didn't contact each other for a long time. He went back to my hometown with me, a small town in the east. My family background was only average. My parents had little education and did odd jobs. My younger brother got married last year, and my parents spent most of their savings buying him a flat and funding his business. The business later failed, and now the whole family was paying off his loans. They couldn't give me much of a dowry, at most promising that my brother wouldn't interfere in my life. I laid everything about my family bare in front of him, as if showing him my deepest insecurities. In this family, ever since I became an adult, I had felt like an outsider. Later, I realized that being an outsider was the best blessing I could get as a woman. Kiyu didn't say much. We only stayed in my hometown for 2 days before leaving. Surprisingly, they accepted me readily. I had originally thought that, with my family background, I would face a lot of hardship entering his family. Later, I found out why. Thanks to Kiyu's irresponsible behavior over the past decade, his family's standards for a daughter-in-law had dropped to simply wanting a decent girl. With his family's approval, I began preparing for the wedding. I introduced Kiyu to my friends, including Jiang Cheng, the man I had secretly loved for years. We booked a private room at a nearby restaurant. Unexpectedly, the speed limit nearby was 40 kilometers per hour, and Kiyu's car easily hit 60 with a light tap on the accelerator. He looked embarrassed, probably nervous. But among my group of introverted science graduates, Kiyu's social skills made him fit in effortlessly. We all felt overly full after eating at the Turkish restaurant. Kiyu stayed inside with the others to watch the live performance, while I went out for a walk to digest. The restaurant had been freezing, so when I stepped outside, the warm summer sea breeze relaxed every pore in my body. I didn't expect Jiang Cheng to suddenly come up to me. He wore a white t-shirt and loose sweatpants, his hair cut into a buzz cut that made his features look even more handsome. At first glance, he looked just like he had in university, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. More than a year had passed since his wedding. He had found out about my marriage earlier than most, but something had snapped in him, and he had obsessively started investigating Kiyu, sending me all of Kiyu's past scandals. Thanks to him, I learned every detail of Kiyu's previous wild, extravagant lifestyle. Han, he's not a suitable husband for you. He isn't. Then you are? I teased, watching him flounder. I'm just worried about you. I smiled. Thank you for your concern. Still refusing to give up, he stepped forward and grabbed my hand. What's good about him besides having money? I pulled away sharply. Jiang Cheng, what did I ever do to you? Why do you have such a problem with my marriage? Han, I pointed at his face. In this day and age, isn't being wealthy enough of an advantage? He has money, so he can choose me firmly without any worries. In truth, I only understood why I had wasted 10 years on Jiang Cheng after going home with Kiyu. My family was poor, and after my brother's failed business, we were in debt. Jiang Cheng had always known about my situation. I hadn't dared to confess to him because of my inferiority complex, but he had been just as cowardly. Our relationship hovered between friends and lovers, surviving as a twisted friendship that wasted our youth. So you really only want him for his money? I looked at the man in front of me and finally realized what was different. In truth, he had never changed. I had just viewed him through the filter of my first love, seeing him as someone perfect and untouchable. But once I saw him as an ordinary person, he was just like everyone else, common and overconfident. Jiang Cheng, you're the last person who has the right to judge me. I pointed at him, fearless. After all, even when I was at my poorest, I never asked you for money. Jiang Cheng stepped back in shock. His eyes lowered guiltily, unable to meet mine. His cowardice made me despise him even more. I hope you'll keep your opinions out of my marriage from now on. Han. A clear voice came from behind me. I hear you have a problem with me? Jiang Cheng fell completely silent. We had what you could call a whirlwind marriage. To some extent, Kiyu's wealthy background gave our marriage its foundation. Paradoxically, I couldn't let go of my pride. I insisted on working and tried to split expenses fairly in daily life. He didn't object. He was a typical wealthy young man, pale and well-kept, around 180 centimeters tall. He wasn't stunningly handsome at first glance, but he had regular, pleasant features. When he didn't speak, he easily attracted girls. At his wealthy background, and it was understandable that he had lived a wild life in previous years. I had seen how his friends behaved when they went out. Even in the short time he was in the toilet, gold diggers would surround Kiyu. I had never seen Kiyu flirt with girls before, but from what his friends said, he was certainly no saint. Before we got married, Kiyu promised me that he had cut ties completely with his ex-girlfriends and would never be with anyone else. I believed him when he said it. In reality, during the first half year of marriage, I was still fighting his old girlfriends. Late at night, I would receive strange text messages. Kiyu doesn't love you. He only married you to please his family. I smiled coldly and deleted them, looking at the man sleeping soundly beside me with mixed feelings. Kiyu's friends told me privately that they were surprised Kiyu had settled down, but when they saw it was me, they understood. I didn't understand their circle's high and mighty opinions. I only knew I had to try my best to make this marriage work, and hold on to everything Kiyu had given me. I was a very rational person, and I hated losing. The woman recently clinging to Kiyu was Yang Wei, his ex-girlfriend who had been entangled with him for years. In Lu Heng's words, she was crazy, and Kiyu had been extremely unlucky to meet her. Lu Heng had been Kiyu's friend since they were little, so his opinion counted. Soon enough, his words were proven right. I received more than a dozen emails, one after another, containing all kinds of photos of them together, traveling, doing outdoor activities, and even intimate bedroom photos. It was a lie to say I felt nothing looking at those pictures. Yu wasn't the type to drag things out. So the fact that Yang Wei had been entangled with him for so long meant she had held a special place in his heart. In them, Yu was slim, still had a youthful innocence, and his eyes shone brightly when he smiled. I felt a twinge of jealousy. Yang Wei had known him in his wild, carefree youth. But now, he was my husband. I never kissed Yu in public. He had complained that I was too reserved. Even when we were intimate at home, I only felt comfortable with the lights off. But he suspected that with the lights off, I was imagining someone else. Yu was in the shower when his phone kept ringing. I glanced at the screen. It was an unmarked number. I answered, but there was silence at first. Yu, can you forgive me? I know I was wrong. I love you. You're the first man I've ever loved. I know you still love me, don't you? I've broken up with Alex. Let's get married. You don't love that woman at all. You're lying to me, aren't you? Why aren't you speaking? Hello, he's in the shower. Stop messing with me. Put a U on the phone. I hung up. When I looked up, Yu was standing at the door in a bathrobe, his wet hair dripping water. I didn't mean to answer your phone. It just kept ringing, and I was worried it was urgent. It's nothing. He took his phone, blocked the number, and said, I'm going to dry my hair. The living room fell silent. I was the one who benefited. So I had planned from the start to be more tolerant when Yu lost patience. The games room was Yu's private space, and I rarely entered. When I pushed the door open, he noticed me immediately, wearing headphones, and looked annoyed. What is it? Yu, can I borrow some money? It's just for cash flow. I'll pay you back with bank interest in a month. How much? He picked up his phone. 1 million. He tapped on his phone, and moments later, I received a transfer notification. Thank you, husband. He never looked up once, his eyes fixed on the game screen. I set up a foreign trade company, while my clients only agreed to pay a 30% deposit, with the balance due after shipment. The gap had to be covered by me. The money Yu gave me instantly kept my small company afloat. When his friends gathered, they occasionally mentioned Yang Wei. They said her ex-boyfriend had leaked her nude photos, and her family was so ashamed that they had cut her off completely. Yu, why did you suddenly go offline yesterday? We got destroyed by the enemies. I couldn't be bothered playing with useless people. I looked at Yu, drinking calmly. It was as if the man who had slammed the door and stormed out in frustration after that phone call last night wasn't him. I really didn't want to be too controlling. After all, he had come back in the middle of the night. I knew he had gone out to meet Yang Wei, and I also knew there was no future between them. Yu might look soft, but he had a strict moral code when it came to relationships. Maybe it was my imagination, but I thought he looked at me as if asking for help. Drink. I'll take care of you if you're drunk. After hearing that, the others really started plying him with alcohol. After several bottles of dark beer, he leaned back on the sofa, his eyes half closed, looking half drunk. He was tall and big. If he passed out completely, I wouldn't be able to carry him. With that thought, I stopped the others. Take it easy. I'm the one who has to clean up after him later. Sister-in-law, you have the best temper out of all our wives. Liu Heng was also a little drunk. His cheeks flushed, and his slurred speech almost made him seem boyishly cute. Most of the wealthy young men in their circle married women from rich families who had tempers. None of them were as sensible as me, knowing when to back down, when to cover for him, never causing trouble for Yu. The car pulled into the underground car park. I supported the unsteady Yu, and we took the elevator straight up. Once inside the flat, we stumbled a few steps, and his entire body weight pressed down on me. We both fell onto the bed. The smell of alcohol on his breath was unpleasant. He stared at me with a distant, troubled look in his eyes. Get up first. Let me help you clean up. I pushed him gently, but he didn't move. Yu? I called softly. Suddenly he grabbed my hand. His large hands gently unclenched my tight, nervous fists and laced our fingers together. The touch of our knuckles pressing against each other was clear and thrilling. Yu? I whispered softly. The gentle tone sent a flicker of heat through me. Did you send those photos out? His calm question felt like a bucket of cold water. extinguishing every spark of warmth. I sobered up at once. He had only pretended to be drunk tonight to confront me. Don't do it again. Now that we're married, I will never do anything to hurt you. Suddenly, he propped himself up on one arm, straightened and staggered unsteadily toward the bathroom. He did not utter another word of blame, nor give me any room to defend myself. He had already made up his mind, as if his version was the full truth. His cold, distant back felt like a slap across my face, painful, yet deeply humiliating. At the end of every month, Yu took me to visit his parents. His father was still in his prime, running a huge company. Yu held the title of vice president but rarely showed up. His mother managed several properties and spent most of her free time socializing, rarely interfering in his life. Xiaohan, I hear you've started your own company. I had not expected Yu to mention this to his father. Before I could reply, his father continued, It's good for young people to have ambition. But business is tough these days. A new project needs capital. Yu hasn't asked me for money since university. From what I know, he doesn't have much. I'm worried you two might struggle. I froze, realizing he feared I would squander Yu's money on my business. I forced a smile. Dad, I've already paid back the money I borrowed from Yu. It was just for cash flow. There won't be any problems from now on. Oh, that's good. He laughed awkwardly, covering his unease. As long as I did not spend Yu's money, he had no reason to meddle in my career. Xiaohan, how are your parents? I heard your brother's job is stable now. What about the family debt? Thank you for asking, Mum. Everything's fine at home. My parents have a steady income from rent now, and my brother and sister-in-law can handle the loan repayments. There shouldn't be any issues. The Qi family was wealthy, and his parents were so shrewd that I felt exhausted just dealing with them. I had grown up in an ordinary family, burdened with countless trivial troubles, all rooted in a lack of money. On the other side of the sofa, Yu stared at his phone, playing games, not lifting his eyebrows once. Once my company was stable, I poured almost all my energy into it. Due to time differences, I often worked until the early hours. My schedule and Yu's were completely reversed. We lived under the same roof, but often went 3 or 4 days without speaking. Meanwhile, the numbers in my bank account grew visibly. For Yu's birthday, I bought him a nice watch, costing nearly 100,000 yuan. I left the gift on the bedside table the night before, so he would see it as soon as he woke up. The bar was as lively as ever. When I arrived, Yu was surrounded by friends, singing the birthday song. He was wearing the watch I had given him, showing it off to Lu Heng and the others rather proudly. Standing among them, I felt, for the first time, a deep sense of confidence. Important clients in the industry usually booked executive meeting rooms at the Intercontinental Hotel to meet suppliers. I had been trying to win this client for a long time and had finally secured a meeting. I dressed in my most professional outfit and prepared thoroughly. You look so formal and stunning today. What a coincidence. I'm going upstairs to meet a client. I'll catch up with you later. They had probably never seen me at work. Today, I was the boss of a company negotiating business. My attitude and presence carefully built over time. The meeting went smoothly. When I came back downstairs, Yu and his friends were still at the bar, apparently waiting for me. Sister-in-law, you looked so cool just now. I instinctively looked at Yu. He was watching me too, his eyes shining with approval. His intense gaze made me slightly embarrassed. That night, back home, he was unusually passionate. When our clothes were removed and we were skin to skin, we kissed deeply. Suddenly, I felt something was wrong and pushed him away. You forgot. Before I could finish, he leaned in again. I held his chest instinctively, forcing him to prop himself up on one arm and pull slightly away. Then his hoarse voice came. Let's have a baby. I froze, staring at his shadowed face, unsure why he had suddenly suggested this. I lifted my long hair helplessly and said, Don't be silly. Suddenly, he turned on the light. The harsh brightness made me feel ashamed. Before I could pull the covers over myself, he held me tightly. He bit my ear hard, making me tremble. You don't light the lights on because it's easier to imagine someone else's face, isn't it? I laughed in exasperation. Stop being so childish. He refused to let go, pressing his forehead against mine, kissing the tip of my nose, murmuring like a spoiled child. Then promise you'll never leave me. I did not know where this marriage was heading. Bringing a new life into such an uncertain relationship felt deeply irresponsible. Ki-yu had not been staying home to play games as often lately. Nor had he been going to the bar much. I received an anonymous call and rushed to the hotel. When I arrived, I saw him leaning drunkenly against a young woman's shoulder. As I approached, she finally noticed me. She pushed the heavy Ki-yu away in alarm and stood aside, explaining nervously. "Miss Han, you're finally here. Mr. Ki is drunk. I didn't know where else to take him." I recognized her. She was an employee at his family's company. I frowned and pulled out Ki-yu's phone. The screen was black. In front of her, I turned it on. It still had 60% battery. No wonder I could not reach him. She lowered her head guiltily. "Mr. Ki said he didn't want to go home and told me to book a room. I was just following his orders." Ki-yu, leaning against the sofa, sobered slightly for a moment. He stared at me blearily, his cheeks flushed. Wife. With unexpected strength, he wrapped his arms around my waist and buried his face in my chest. Afraid he would fall, I held him with one hand. Seeing this, the girl glanced at me nervously. One sharp look from me turned her pale, and she twisted her hands together until they were red. "Mr. Ki is drunk. Please arrange a room and someone to help me take him up." "Right this way, madam." This was a corporate hotel used by Ki-yu's father, and later recommended to me for clients. Before leaving, I glanced at the girl still standing there. "It's late. Shouldn't you go home? Won't your family worry?" Without waiting for her reply, I walked with Manager Lin to the front desk. She was young and ambitious, but unfortunately cowardly and not very bright. Did she really think she could do anything with Ki-yu that drunk? She had no basic common sense. "Thank you. Are there any presidential suites available tonight?" Manager Lin was sharp. I owed her a favor. "Yes, Ms. Han. Would you like some fresh clothes?" "No. I'll have my assistant send some over." I handed over the card and said sincerely, "Thank you for today. It's nothing." Even drunk, Mr. Ki clearly wasn't interested in that girl. I was worried something might happen, so I called you. When Ki-yu woke up the next day, it was already late morning. To look after him, I had stayed at the hotel to handle work. He rushed out of the bedroom naked, looking panicked. He relaxed only when he saw me. "What's going on?" "You were picked up last night." Having spent years in nightlife, he knew exactly what that meant. He took the espresso I had made him, avoiding my eyes. "I'm a guy. Who'd pick me up?" "You didn't know? Boys should protect themselves too." My gaze fell on his flat stomach. "Why drink so much? You wasted 3 months at the gym. Those abs you worked so hard on are gone." He rubbed his stomach. "I'll get them back soon." "Don't. People will only take advantage." "By the way, why are you suddenly working at your dad's company?" I had heard he was working unusually hard. That morning, Mr. Ki had messaged, praising Ki-yu's performance at a dinner, and telling me to take good care of him. I got bored recently, so I went in for a few days. Met a northern client. Drank too much, won't happen again. He sat next to me and put his arms around my waist. I massaged the pressure points on his head. He must still have a terrible hangover. His phone beeped. He opened it, glanced at the screen, and tensed up immediately. "What's wrong?" I asked. He did not answer, just handed me the phone. A new text message. "Mr. Ki, you were very drunk last night and insisted on going to a hotel. I had no choice but to bring you to our company hotel. Before I could check you in, Miss Han arrived. I think she seemed upset. I hope she doesn't misunderstand. Mr. Ki, your little white lotus has shown up." Ki-yu typed a short reply, tossed the phone aside and turned to hug me, looking fierce like an angry cat. "You don't care at all, do you?" I was pushed down onto the sofa. Looking at his delicate features, I could not help laughing. Why should I care? Nothing happened between you two. What if something had happened? What would you do if that day ever came? We talked about this before we got married. I pinched his cheek. He had lost weight recently, and the bone felt slightly sharp. Some things were better left unsaid, but he insisted on making it explicit. "Divorce. You." He pretended to pinch my cheek hard, but his hand only gently stroked the corner of my eye. He snorted and suddenly stood up. Perhaps it was my imagination, but for a second, as he lowered his eyes, he looked almost disappointed. It must have been my imagination. Ki-yu was not the sentimental type. He walked toward the bathroom, paused, then turned back to me. The deal I closed yesterday was worth more than 50 million. I stared, then quickly gave him a thumbs up. Well done, Mr. Ki. Only then did his face light up. He continued into the bathroom. I picked up his phone. His reply read, "Not everyone blacks out when drunk." He always kept clear boundaries with people he did not like. We had dinner at his parents' house every month. That day I had a terrible migraine. Ki-yu suggested I stay home, but I had been too busy to visit for over 2 months. I was afraid of offending them, so I took some medicine and planned to stay overnight at their mansion. When I got out of the car, the migraine made me feel nauseous. His parents looked delighted. "Zhao Han, could you be pregnant?" I quickly shook my head. Ki-yu parked and came over, sounding annoyed. "Pregnant? What pregnant? Can't you see she's unwell?" "Don't speak to Dad like that," I chided him. Ki-yu fell silent and helped me to his room. I took painkillers, but they did not help. The light in the room hurt my eyes. I lifted a hand to block it, and Ki-yu immediately strode over and drew the curtains tightly shut. He brought an ice pack and gently pressed it to my forehead. In the darkness, I could not see his face clearly, yet his focused expression was imprinted vividly in my mind. "Try to sleep for a while." I instinctively reached for his hand. He let out a low, hoarse laugh. His large hand wrapped around mine and tucked it under the covers. "I'll be outside. Don't be afraid." His deep, magnetic voice chased away the unease and fear in the dark. I did not know how long I slept. When I woke up, the room was completely black. I felt my way out of bed and walked toward the light in the corridor. It was late, and I did not want to wake his parents by calling out. At the end of the corridor was the second-floor terrace. "You should have a baby soon. It'll put your mother and me at ease." It was Mr. Ki's voice. The three of them were sitting on the terrace, drinking tea, and looking at the starry sky and city lights. "Can you stop going on about babies? TCH, how old do you think you are?" Mr. Ki calmed Mrs. Ki, then spoke earnestly to Ki-yu. I'm glad to see you taking life seriously. But I can see Zhao Han is very driven. If you find it hard, take it easier. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. We have more than enough money. Your mother and I only have you. I just want you to be happy." "I won't go on, you won't listen anyway." Ki-yu snorted, non-committal. I quietly returned to the bedroom. Lying on the bed, I thought about when I first started working. My mother had called, sounding pitiful, asking what to do about my brother's 200,000 yuan debt. At the time, I had wanted to ask her why she had given that much money to a fresh adult to start a business. Had she not thought about the consequences? Why did she only come to me when things went wrong? It was not even my debt. She knew I could not ignore it. I had only just graduated, with a bright future ahead. Awake? Still hurting? Ki-yu walked in, turned on the lamp and leaned down to place an ice pack on my forehead. His eyelashes were long, casting fine shadows under his eyes. His skin was so smooth I could barely see pores. I envied him. He had his parents' complete, unreserved love. That was why he had grown up so fearless, so confident. "Hey, why are you crying?" He wiped the moisture from my eyes, looking flustered. "Where else does it hurt?" I laughed, crying and smiling like a fool. "Nothing. I'm just a bit weak when I'm unwell. Bear with me. You're my wife." Talk nonsense. His large hand wrapped around mine, warm and secure. I had read a sentence a few days earlier. If you feel comfortable and at peace in a relationship, it means someone loves you. I looked at Ki-yu, sitting on the single sofa, scrolling on his phone. A warm light softened his edges, blurring my first impression of him as a stubborn, straight-talking rich kid. I had just returned from a business trip abroad when Mr. Ki was taken away for investigation. Clearly, no one had lived there for a while. The factory in the industrial park was reported for illegally burying toxic waste. All company executives were detained. Faced with such a mess, when I saw Ki-yu again, he looked as if he had aged 10 years in just 2 weeks. The entire staff had left. The whole building was empty except for the light in his office. His office, once as clean as a show home, was now covered in documents, messy like a battlefield. At the sight of me, Ki-yu's eyes turned red. When he hugged me, His voice was weak and aggrieved. Dad was dealing with it all along. He bought the most expensive equipment and followed the highest standards. He just ran out of time. Just a little more time. I held him comfortingly and kissed his forehead gently. I know Dad made a mistake. But he was trying to fix it. It's okay. Don't worry. He was terrifyingly thin. I could feel only bones when I held him. Have you eaten dinner? He did not reply. I knew he was avoiding the question. I pulled away and looked straight into his eyes. You have to take care of yourself now. More than 3,000 employees and their families are counting on you. I know it's messy and complicated. We'll handle it step by step. Sort everything out. You're not alone. You have me, and you have your staff. We'll get through this together. Things grew worse by the day. Senior executives handed in their resignations. Clients who could not receive their goods on time sued for breach of contract. Unscrupulous companies arrived to talk about equity acquisition. On New Year's Eve, the city was bright with lights and family reunions. We were still at the company, processing compensation documents. Fireworks exploded outside, and firecrackers echoed with blessings. Yet Kiyu asked me if I wanted a divorce. I had not shed a single tear during those exhausting days. But when he hunched over, his eyes downcast, looking timid and careful, I could not stop my tears from falling. On the drive home, we both fell silent. The heater was strong inside the car. I rolled down the window. The cold wind brushed my cheeks, keeping my mind clear. I remembered the night I received the call from the hotel. I could not reach him and drove recklessly, running red lights without thinking. I remembered when I had a migraine. He laid me gently on the bed, removed my makeup, washed my face, and held an ice pack to my forehead. In less than 3 years, he had changed from a spoiled, straight-talking rich kid to a grounded, mature man. I had thought that after 30, talking about love was overly sentimental. But the thought of spending the rest of my life without him was unbearable. During our time together, I had learned every one of his expressions, movements, and tones. Before I knew it, he had wrapped himself around my life like ivy, deep-rooted and inseparable. For our New Year's Eve dinner, we simply ate a bowl of dumplings. As I washed the dishes, Ki-yu stood beside me peeling an apple, quiet and still. I put the bowls into the sterilizer and took off my gloves. I finally fell in love with someone. I don't want to give up easily. Ki-yu looked at me, his eyes red. His lips trembled, but he said nothing. He put down the apple and came to hold me. Okay. In the end, that was all he said, his voice deep and hoarse. At that moment, fireworks burst outside the window, lighting up the night sky. We held each other, like two isolated islands finally connected by a bridge. The trembling in our chests lingered for a long time. The final verdict came half a year later. The company paid the fine, and Mr. Key was released. Shortly afterward, he suffered a sudden cerebral infarction and was hospitalized. Fortunately, he was sent in time. An aggressive anticoagulant treatment relieved his symptoms. His life was not in danger. Mrs. Key stayed by his side. Once a well-maintained lady who looked barely 30. She had developed large patches of grey hair amid the recent disasters. She had grown up in comfort, never suffering hardship, then been spoiled by Mr. Key for most of her life. Her smooth life had been suddenly overturned by a huge wave, leaving her lost. When she saw me, she collapsed into my arms and cried like a helpless child. He tried desperately to speak to me, his mouth moving, but no clear words came out. The old fox who had once exuded shrewdness in every gesture was now just an ordinary old man, unable to escape the cycle of life, aging, illness and death. Dad, I just called Kiyu. He's just finished a meeting and will be here soon. The old man's eyes lit up. Then he looked anxious and began to mumble indistinctly. Don't worry, Dad. The company is fine. Some of the workshops have been approved to restart production. We'll be able to supply some of our clients very soon. Only then did Mr. Key seem to relax. To this man, Kiyu was his son by blood, and the company was his spiritual legacy. He could not say which was more precious, but both held the key to his life. It was nearly midnight when Kiyu arrived. He had been in a provincial meeting and rushed back immediately upon hearing the news. The three of them chatted together, while I went to arrange the hospital formalities and booked a nearby hotel for Kiyu. By the time we reached the hotel, It was almost 3 in the morning. My mind was on the verge of collapse, but my body was still running on empty. Ki-yu lit a cigarette and took a deep breath. He glanced at me, perhaps remembering that I disliked smoke, and stubbered it out in the ashtray. I leaned against him, pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, and lit one for him myself. Go on. Just this once. I added after a moment. Smoking is bad for you. Hidao wants us to hit 800 million in sales, he said with a bitter smile. Should I agree, or should we give up? But amid the crisis, many had taken the opportunity to attack and extort us. Several subsidiaries had been investigated over rumors, and bank financing had gradually fallen apart. Cash flow problems and open up new sales channels. However, the investment came with a bet agreement. If we failed to meet the sales target, we would have to buy back Hidao's shares at a cost of 600 million. After nearly half a year of stagnation, the company had lost major clients. New supply chains had emerged, and we faced industry-wide exclusion. What's the current capacity of the approved workshops? What products can we make? Ki-yu gave a figure, his face darkening further. Hidao must have investigated thoroughly. The products we were allowed to produce were exactly those for which they were the largest buyer on the market. They control this bet. He had studied in Britain, where the capital markets were well established, and he was no stranger to such agreements. It was a huge gamble. Win, and we would rise to a new level. Lose, and we would be ruined. We had no choice. The company was on its last legs, needing just one more boost to survive. Fail, and it would be finished. Scared? Ki-yu smiled. I was not one to admit defeat. He had underestimated me, and the stubbornness inside me rose up. I bit his lower lip in defiance. His body tensed, and he quickly pressed the cigarette into the ashtray before holding me around the waist. When we pulled apart, pale and breathless, we looked at each other and laughed knowingly. He held me and kissed my lips gently. I've known hardship and I've enjoyed luxury. I have no regrets at this stage of my life. When you make your decision, don't worry about dragging me down. All right. Then let's take the gamble. The Key family was essentially grounded and down to earth, and he had inherited that quality well. The clients we had built up over the years were similar. At such a difficult time, seeing the second generation of the Ka family carry the same humility as his father, most were willing to lend a hand. As another workshop was approved for production, the company's capacity gradually increased, and we gained some confidence in hitting the sales target. It was then that I discovered I was pregnant. Looking at Ki-yu buried in work in his office, I did not know how to tell him. Han, perfect timing. I just spoke to the boss of Yujia. He gave me a tip. Heng Sheng once signed a private bet agreement with Hidao and was later stabbed in the back. Heng Sheng had been a famous company in the industry, only to be quietly acquired by Hidao. Ki-yu swore rarely. I instinctively touched my still flat stomach. If that's the case, we can't rely on their big orders. I rested my hand on his shoulder and sat beside him. The lawyers have reviewed the agreement. What's the verdict? Even sell it cheaply to recover their 600 million. So we still have to hit 800 million in sales. I stared at the report on his screen. How much more do we need? The workshops can't run 24 hours a day. Within the next 3 months, and the goods for that volume did not even exist. Outsourcing? Difficult to source. Unsurprising. Our competitors were waiting for the Key family to collapse. Then buy under a different name. Don't forget I ran a foreign trade company. Middleman work was what I did. The purchasing season was approaching and most clients had already placed orders. The study lights stayed on all night. Sitting in the living room, I could imagine Kiyu's anxiety inside. Hidao is giving its orders to Hongda at this stage. Power restrictions in the second half of the year mean everyone is short of capacity. We have stock. The advantage is ours. Over the past days, Kiyu and I had contacted old clients one by one. And when they received our calls, we reached an agreement immediately. We hit the sales target ahead of schedule. Kiyu's eyes were bloodshot, and his tired face lit up with unbridled joy as he held me tightly. We did it. I can't believe we really did it. The delight in his eyes was heartbreaking. In such a short time, he had mastered an unfamiliar industry, working day and night under the pressure of life or death. I wanted to praise him, but a sharp pain shot through my lower abdomen. He was startled by my expression and stared at me in confusion. Through my blurred vision, I saw the alarm spread across his face. He felt unnaturally quiet. If not for the tight line of his jaw and his pale complexion, I would have thought he was calm. The cramping had actually passed, leaving only a cold feeling. It's not serious. Just rest and maintain a balanced diet. The doctor left with the medical notes. Yu and I exchanged guilty looks. I hadn't deliberately kept it from him. I just hadn't wanted to add to the chaos or distract him. He knelt down so that his eyes were level with mine. His eyes reddened. Then he suddenly laughed. I'm going to be a dad. You have to be careful, especially the first 3 months. Shall we send Sister Lin to look after you? Yu was raised by Sister Lin. My parents were overjoyed and kept telling me to take care of myself. I did not know where our marriage would lead. But at least for now, we achieved and supported each other. And we still felt happy. Extra. From Kiyu's perspective. The first time I saw Han, I thought she was easy on the eyes. So I looked at her a few more times. She noticed and kept a cold face, as if I had wronged her somehow. The wedding planner asked her to carry the drinks. 8 tall glasses filled with wine. Luckily, she walked steadily, just like the woman I came to know later. Serious in everything she did. Every step grounded. On our first date, Hannon asked if I had gone to a hotel with that girl. The mischief in her expression, those bright eyes, it was impossible not to be attracted. I explained instinctively, proving I hadn't. I was grateful that, on that occasion, to be honest, we weren't players. We just had too many options. My dad was obsessed with qualifications. After high school, he insisted on sending me abroad to polish my image. Little did he know that even overseas, we only mixed with our own crowd. Going abroad didn't mean much. At least I came back speaking fluent English. And still succeeded. At that fiery age, who wasn't ambitious, wanting to build a career? Much of that ability depends on talent. Several friends overestimated themselves and were talked into investing in engines. Even Daimler, the pioneer, had shifted to new energy. Tisk, those money-burning projects almost cost them their family fortunes. I followed the trend and invested in several projects. In the end, only a bar and the car modification workshop survived. Realizing I was still sane, I hired an investment advisor and stopped dabbling in startups. My dad said I could take over the company or hire professional managers. His only demand was that I marry and have children to carry on the family line. I didn't have the heart to argue. After all, everything I had, food, clothes, the life I lived, came from his money. Han was the perfect girl to marry. Well-behaved, serious, not deeply experienced in the world. At first glance, she seemed flustered and hid behind coldness. But she was actually innocent, probably never even dated. This was the first time I dated someone with marriage in mind. I messaged her 3 times a day, took her to the occasional movie, held hands while walking down the street. It was boring, yet strangely comforting. Just as I'd thought, she was marriage material. I knew she had liked a boy for 10 years. I teased her for being reserved. But really, it was precisely because she cared too much that she had been cautious, hesitating until the moment had passed. Either way, I ended up benefiting. She was well-read and knowledgeable. Talking to her was interesting. For a girl, she knew more about the prostate than I did. I thought, if I stayed with her, I'd probably live a very healthy life. Besides that, she was also very sensible. Frankly, I despised people who cheated. Yet even after we married, I thought I might still be unfaithful. I believed that if it happened, she would handle the situation perfectly. I knew she didn't love me. To her, I was a step up. I didn't mind her family background, just as she didn't mind my past or my careless lifestyle. My ex-girlfriends had all broken up amicably. Strangely, when they heard I was getting married, they started clinging on. It was ironic. Did they really think I would never settle down? In those situations, I just blocked them. Yang Wei had somehow got hold of Han's phone number and kept sending her harassing messages. When the photos of Yang Wei were leaked, I found out she had sent our old intimate photos to Han. The woman was insane. I was so angry I wanted to sue her, but Liu Heng stopped me. The priority was to find the source and stop the photos from spreading further. It later turned out that a hacker's Trojan had stolen the photos from Han's email. Yang Wei was crazy. No matter how Hanhen's email ended up logged on in some shabby internet cafe and infected, the photos were taken down, and the Yang family did not pursue the matter. But the incident had walked a fine line. So I drank a little, used drunkenness as an excuse, and reminded her not to do anything like that again. She had been preparing her business for a long time. I had seen her making transnational calls from the study in the middle of the night. Her English so fluent that I, a so-called returnee, felt ashamed, especially since she was a chemical engineering graduate. I thought nothing of it. Money and connections were just icing on the cake. Her business grew quickly. I was a little envious. That day, Lu Heng and I went to a hotel where they had new wine. I saw her walking through the lobby. I had never seen her dressed like that. Capable, confident, elegant. Impossible to look away from. I thought of myself years ago, fresh out of education, full of ambition. And here I was, at 4 p.m. in a 5-star hotel, just tasting new wine. Now, I despised the lazy version of myself. She was advancing too fast, and it made me uneasy. Games no longer comforted me. They only made me restless. I started working at my dad's company. His company was in high tech. When my dad saw me, he was overjoyed and assigned several senior technicians to help me. It took me a long time to understand the industry the family business was in. I thought I had plenty of time, that my dad could hold on for another 20 years. The crisis struck without warning. When my dad was taken away, I realized for the first time that I was basically just a spoiled brat living off my parents. Faced with the mess, I was trapped. Even working day and night, my tiny strength changed nothing. Hanhen held me and comforted me, telling me to take it step by step. Her voice was gentle yet powerful. I actually believed we would be okay. As it turned out, the process was painful and long. I didn't want to drag her down. I asked for a divorce. Without me, with her achievements, she could have a freer future. Thus she cried. I didn't know how to comfort her. On New Year's Eve, I stayed with her. Amid the festive atmosphere, I tried to be as pleasing as possible. In our final moments together, I wanted us both to keep warm memories. With red eyes, she said she didn't want a divorce. In that moment, the love that had grown quietly over the years, nurtured by her, flooded out from my heart. I picked up a Mercedes G a few days ago. My dad praised it for looking tough and asked how much it cost. 2.8 million on the road. My dad's face twitched. He was probably upset. Since taking over the company, I hadn't bought anything I really wanted. But I only drove the G-Class privately. It was too flashy. For work, I still used the Sirius Maybach. Property prices in the city had halved. At the peak, they had been 100,000 per square meter. Now, a 700 square meter floor cost less than 40,000 per square meter. Fully decorated. My wife had sharp ears and quick hands, and we snapped it up. I heard the penthouse owner lives on the top floor of our building. Every time we meet downstairs, he looks at me resentfully. The older generation is quite thrifty. My dad still lives in the suburban mansion. While others were busy buying land, he poured his effort into expanding the company. Now the policy requires factories to move into industrial parks, raising investment thresholds to at least $1 billion. Most companies have to go public to raise that kind of money. Early on, for strategic development, my dad bought land several kilometers around each factory. Now the factories were facing demolition. I did the maths quietly and realized working was tiring. Early retirement didn't sound bad. My dad would never agree. Even in poor health, he still comes to the company once a week to make sure I haven't ruined his life's work. The company is extremely busy, especially with expansion these years. Working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day still isn't enough. I went to Shanghai a few days ago. Old Liu arrived in a Bentley. Damn, it was gleaming. That bastard agreed to raise prices with us last year, then secretly instructed his sales team to undercut us. This year, we stocked up on a huge amount of raw materials. He's going to regret it. We have 2 children. Our eldest is starting primary school this year, but we haven't secured a place yet. That school is difficult to get into. She has her own way of doing things. After years of adjusting, I mostly choose to respect her. My wife asked me if I'd been losing a lot of hair lately, whether work was stressing me out. Yeah, stress. I didn't have any before.